Namaste. Welcome to Bharat Vichar. I'm your host, Balaji Subramanian. Tonight, we are joined by Puneet Sahani. He is the coordinator of Sikh Seva Group and a historian of past and present Sikh history. Puneet Sahani ji, warm welcome to Bharat Vichar, sir.
Namaste Balaji bhai, Jai Ma Bharti. I'm very happy to be at your show. Thank you for inviting me.
Puneet, Punjab has seen a lot of turmoil for centuries. But after the partition, when things were starting to look better, somehow, few decades later, things got again really, really bad. You have talked about this many times, but if you could spend just a couple of minutes on how this whole Khalistan ideology started, and and then we will come back to the present, and then we will proceed further. If you could, please, sir.
So, you see, there are like two facets, right? So, of course, in like late 70s and 80s, we have like the monster Bhindranwale like coming on the stage. And he basically spews a gospel of hate and violence. And, like when you focus on this resentments and like tribal superiority or something like that, like the final conclusion of always this kind of politics is always genocide. It's actually like a gift, because like in Punjabi there was so much brotherhoods between Hindu and Sikhs that we preserved it. That like if you actually look, it's very fascinating. It was the same in like the India-Pakistan partition. It was 55% Muslim and 45% Hindu and Sikh, and you see what horrors happened, right? And it was the same that they wanted to do in Punjab. It was again 55% Sikhs and 45% non-Sikhs, right? So that is it, and people have written on it, and something. But there is actually like a great book that was written by Rajiv Kapoor that I found in my research, and he wrote this excellent book called Sikh Separatism, and he was doing his PhD in Oxford, and at that time this nonsense had not happened of this Bhindranwale and everything. And basically what he said, what he found was this communal politics had infused into like the Sikh religious institutions, especially like the SGPC, and something like this is going to explode. And I actually find a lot of weight in, for example, what he has done. So, for example, if you look at SGPC and if you look at Muslim League, they sprout out at the same time from the same incentives that basically the British government sets. And their entire narrative and politics is of separate nationhood, resentment, like having like not like competing in like a fair system, but having like disproportionate representation, having quotas or something like that. So I would like really recommend your audience to actually also do it, because that also I certainly find a lot of weight in what Rajiv Kapoor puts in his thesis. And I think that basically, okay, Bhindranwala like exacerbated it and, like blew this up. But there was always like grounds, like SGPC and like the kind of, like despicable politics that's involved in.
You actually started the conversation for the next question, actually. There seems to be a... Can you hear me now?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
There seems to be a fire truck. Are you able to hear?
Yes, yes.
I'm able to hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you
hear
now.
Me? Yeah, you can hear me, right?
I can hear you now. But I missed
as I was saying, Puneet, that no, I'll repeat. You actually started the conversation for the next question. You have always called the ouster of SGPC who control all the Sikh temples. State your case, sir.
Right. Okay. So I got it. Like for example, SGPC. Now, what is fascinating is, like there has come out some scholarship on like like actually like really good scholarship. And I would say like there is Venkat Dhulipala, who basically wrote this seminal book on, like making a new Medina, and then Istiaq Ahmed wrote. But, like they just overlooked. And as a student of economics, I believe like, you create the same system. By system, I mean same incentive and incentive and constraints, and you get the same outcomes. So, for example, what Muslim League was saying, SGPC was basically formed the same, and, like British created it. It was not something that came from like the grassroots. So, for example, even that this Hindus and Sikhs are separate. So, if you look at this SGPC, and, they basically indulge in violence and street muscle, exactly like what Muslim League did. But if you look at like the Sikh scholars or people who are teaching in Gurdwaras, they had no problem being Hindus. If you look at basically like the kings of the time, from Kapurthala to Patiala, everybody, like they are influential people. They had no problem being Hindus. They had at that time descendants of gurus, who had a lot of influence. They had not but the British engineered this poison into them. And what is fascinating is, like you take any statement or any slogan of Muslim League that was used when this communal politics comes, especially from 1917 and 18, when they have this Montego-Kensington Resort, which is basically like quota politics based on your exactly word to word that was used by these Akalis. And SGPC, and like for example, SGPC, its whole self-interest is in, like fanning this insecurity and being this separate. So like, for example, let's say you have All India Muslim Personal Law Board, right? So if you have like some Muslim intellectual or a scholar or, like a politician, and he says we should all be like integrate into Indian nationhood, and, we should be Indians first, and religion can be something, that is your personal affair and it doesn't really matter. Like AI, All India Muslim Personal Law Board would be up in arms, because its whole business being there for businesses being, we are the representative of the Muslims. The Muslims cannot express themselves, because they are insecure. So the exact same thing is SGPC is doing. Now, if you look, for example, this 1980 agitation of the Akalis, when this Bhindranwala and all this came, again, they say, for example, they come up with this: we are the sole representatives of the Sikhs. This was exactly what Jinnah's demand was. They were like, all demands of the Sikhs should come through the Akali Dal or the SGPC. There could be no other Sikh leader. Then the British gave them Gurdwaras of Punjab. They said, we want to control all the Gurdwaras, even if they are in Kanyakumari, we want to do this. And this is exactly what Muslim League was doing. Like everything should be in our control, and these are our captive bloc. And we are like, if you want to do anything, so they were just thinking, okay, like so many million people, and we have the influence over so many people, and this. So their mindset has always been like numbers, and so many numbers that we control, and like, so it's basically a mafia.
So in a sense, SGPC is acting like, say, the Vatican during the Middle Ages, before the Martin Luther Reformation, when the Church, Catholic and the Protestant Church split, that they have the complete hegemony over how the Sikh religion is practiced. Have they made any changes to some of the practices of the Sikh religion, like funeral or marriage or anything like that?
So yes and no. So when you say about Catholic Church, for example, Catholic Church also has some redeeming qualities, actually. They had like some great artists and like poets, and even, of course, they didn't want anybody to question the dogma of the Catholic Church, but, you see great architecture or something. So SGPC doesn't have any of the redeeming qualities, but has all the worst attributes of the Catholic Church, like calling people infidel or kafir, like trying to bully or harass or even kill like people who don't adhere to them. Like, for example, there was like this like great scholar whose name was, to give you an example, his name was Pyar Singh. So he wrote a book in 1993 on like what is the history of Guru Granth Sahib, right? And that kind of like went a bit, it's a very scholarly book, and he wrote it in Punjabi that ordinary person can understand. So it was a fine achievement. Now SGPC says, somebody said this is against our religion or something, and we will throw you out of the community. It is like, okay, I'm a scholar, tell me what is wrong. It's like, nothing is wrong, some feelings have been hurt. And then he's like, okay, do something, like for example, do service or something, and maybe we forgive you. It's like, okay, I'm a practicing Sikh, if you say I do it. But it's like, at least tell me what wrong I have done. Like, what is in this book that is like, that is wrong. And they're like, no, we can't tell you. And this book is blasphemous. And, they didn't just ban the book. They, if you read the news from 1993, for example, they burned all the books. They burnt all these books. And it has only become much more radical and much more rabid and much more belligerent organization since the 93. So it is just like a poison that, that keeps on like getting more pernicious. So this is what they are doing. They just like, at least like if you see like Catholic Church, they have a very skewed understanding and they don't want anything, but they would give reason. Some pope or some papal agency will say, okay, this is blasphemy for so and so reason. Here there is nothing.
But Puneet, I was under the impression. I mean, I'm not a Sikh historian, but whatever articles or books or scholarly works that I have studied or interacted with Sikhs. Basically, I've lived abroad and I used to visit Gurdwara every Sunday and congregate with Sikhs and all, and I loved that environment. And the discussions that we have, is their concept of sacrilege, blasphemy, and what is that word? When you're incommunicated from a religion, is there a concept? Is there any history, say, of any of the 10 gurus who existed? Is there a history of that? Because I don't think so. I mean, as far as I know,
excommunication, right?
Excommunication. Sorry, yes, that's the word.
So like there are two concepts in any person, right? One is coming from theology, and one is coming from the top, and one is basically like the ground cultural reality, right? So at a cultural level, like for example, this was always like a big taboo. For example, like eating cow or beef, that will always get you excommunicated in like North India from Hindu or Sikh. And in Maharaja Ranjit Singh's time, that was the only thing that brought capital punishment. Otherwise, there was no capital punishment in Maharaja Ranjit Singh time. And actually, there was even a murder attempt on Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and he didn't get capital punishment. But for cow, you did get capital punishment, right? Now, in the concept of this excommunication, this never occurs in like Sikh gurus. They are very tolerant, and even they are like cousins or brothers who basically start rival schools, and they claim they are the real Sikhs, and and the gurus are imposters, and they don't just like challenge intellectually, but they threaten physically and they make attacks and stuff like that. But the gurus always speak to them with respect. They never abuse or something like that. But actually, like when the Khalsa is formed, only then because an army is formed, right? In that times, there are certain guru says like, these 3 or 4 schools, you don't associate with them. In a way, they are soft excommunicated, and it actually makes perfect sense. Like, let's say, for example, we are living in a society, right? And we believe in freedom of speech and everybody should say anything. But let's say if we are forming an army together, then there has to be a chain of command. Then there has to be a strong definition of us and them, because we are in a war situation. So for Khalsa, and in that time, there is a perspective. But I'm telling you, like in 1917, these things are debated because this was a very amorphous spiritual movement, very, very powerful spiritual movement. But it was all about, moving from your identities and like religiosity to basically spirituality. So what is a Sikh? You are as much a Sikh as I am or anybody else. Nobody questioned it. Like, for example, like Pakistan has gone there and, Bulle Shah, but we still remember Bulle Shah is part of our cultural heritage.
Puneet, your screen is frozen.
Hello?
Puneet, I'm sorry, your voice is breaking. I think now it's all right. Sorry. If you could just
Can
repeat the last part again, please. Yeah, I can hear you. If you could repeat the last part, please.
Yeah. So this was not an idea about religiosity. This whole movement was to move from like identities and religiosities to inner spirituality. So basically, you are as much a Sikh as I am. It's basically, whoever is inspired by a guru's teachings. So for example, like Bulle Shah is, everything is left in Pakistan, where he lived and born and, spread his message. But we revere him. He's part of our Punjabi heritage. Now, if somebody stands up from like Pakistan and says, oh, Bulle Shah was Muslim, or, like you are not from this, you can't, revere him. What nonsense. So these things, like I say, Rajiv Kapoor, there is a great book, Sikh Separatism, in that he basically gives, they are debated. They're like, this idea of Sikh, it had to be defined. Like, they were all people inspired by Guru's message who called themselves Sikhs. But to like define what is Sikh, everybody was completely lost. And to define it in an exclusionary manner, that you can't have X practices or Y practices or, like this, because Gurus never asked. They said everybody comes and, just inspired by the spiritual message. Again, like, what is a Sikh temple? That was not defined, because some saint will start and, he's inspired by Guru's message. And he will start his own thing like Dharamsala, and everybody was fine with it. And that's how they converted people, like some Udasi would go and he would go to Sindh, for example. And he would like give lectures and, then he would tell, okay, this is Vedant and, how these Sikh Gurus have revived it. And, they would create a Guru Mandir where they are revering like the Hindu deities, they are revering the Sikh Gurus. And also this person, like this Udasi saint who basically brought this knowledge to them.
I think there seems to be a latency with the internet.
Sorry? Hello?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. I think there's some latency problem with the internet. I'm probably on my side.
Okay. So again, like these things, these were not germane questions for us. Like, what is the definition of a Sikh? It was like the process, not like an identity marker. Like, what is a Gurudwara? These things actually are defined for the first time, like about 100 years ago, after this communal politics comes, because it becomes a fight for control of Gurudwaras.
Right. So is it fair to say that there has been an attempt to turn the Sikh religion into sort of a monotheistic Abrahamic faith?
Most certainly. Like again, you said about blasphemy. This blasphemy, this concept doesn't exist in like Indic tradition. We are a civilization, that encourages questioning, and encourages criticism. It's not like, okay, Shankaracharya says I'm great and you start venerating. He has to debate with people. And this is what Guru Nanak does. He basically goes into a dialogue and engages with people. This concept of blasphemy and, like to believe in something. We are not a belief-based civilization. We are a knowledge-based civilization. So what have you realized that matters, not what basically you believe in. So you don't have to believe in anything to be a Hindu, for example. A Muslim, you have to believe that, there is an Allah and there is a Muhammad and he's like the final prophet. If you don't do it, you're not a Muslim. But there is nothing like this. You can be a virulent critique of Vedas and you can still be a Hindu. You can say, I don't believe in Shiva or Ram or Krishna or anybody, and you're still a Hindu. So this was not our civilization.
Right. Puneet, now we're going to come back to present. I don't want to go back to the dark period of 1980s. I was born in Delhi. I studied, worked in Delhi for many years. And actually, I'm a witness to the 1984 Sikh riots. I was a boy. I was just a little boy, but I saw the violence against some of my neighbors who lived there. And I also saw the courage of people trying to protect them. I saw the courage of my father trying to, protect the property of one of our Sikh neighbors. And I saw that. I saw both the ugliness and the courage that people showed when the state decided to turn the other way and, allow a pogrom. I will call it a pogrom, actually. It was not a riot, it was a pogrom to happen in the nation's capital. Now, we're going to come back to present. Punjab is a border state. And recently, the Prime Minister's life was compromised. There is no other word. I personally think that there was bureaucratic and political collusion, because unless and until the political masters, unfortunately in India, the bureaucracy and the police work for the state just as they work for the British. That's why we don't have police reform or civil reforms and because the police has to work for the state, not for the people. So there was a compromise. So my question to you is this: has BJP given the Khalistanis a long rope, hoping that they will hang themselves, or is it a big mistake?
I don't know, your question implies they have some level of intelligence and they have a strategy. I just think like they have nothing. They just have like a very short-term vision, and they have not studied history, and forget about history. They have not studied Punjab, what happened. So like I would just say, like, just read. It's like not that far. It's just like 30 years ago, and we had like it's incredible horror. Like they paint like KPS Gill as like a butcher or something, and they are idiots. He basically comes like for the second time in '92, and he wipes out everything in 8 months, and then there is complete peace in Punjab. But if you look at 1990 and 1991, for a 24-month period, the average killing every month in Punjab for 2 years is 500 people. This is what we went through, and they have no education of, they are just playing footsie with this terrorists. They just think they would appease the radical elements, and then this problem would go away. Whereas this exacerbates the problem, because like there are Sikhs like me or our team who are fighting this, thugs. You basically slap on the face when you placate people like this. So if you see, for example, the CAA was one of the biggest instigators, Sirsa. They have incorporated him into the BJP. Now, just yesterday or day before yesterday, the main financier of this Air India bombing, his name is Ripudaman Malik. And, he's basically the main guy, because there are other guys involved, but they are thugs. So Malik is a multi-millionaire. He has the brains. He basically gets the team together. He gets the expert and, like the, mechanic together to, fix the bomb. He's basically everything. And now he basically writes a letter to Modi, like saying a few good words. And all the supposedly nationalist Sikhs who are like pro-Modi Sikhs, you read their Twitter, they are saying, Ripudaman Malik, just from a letter, from a terrorist, he has become a Sikh leader. Now, how can you say that? Like they are Indians. They killed 329 people. Out of that, I think 82 or 84 were children under the 12 years of age. Some of them have, because I have started speaking, we have gotten in touch. These families are still grieving. They never got a dead body.
You can't.
Yeah. And, there is a great book by Terry Molesky called Blood for Blood. I really recommend it, and here's a documentary. It's incredible. They are Indians, like these innocents, they did nothing. They had nothing to do with it. And the main guy, and, basically, he's not convicted. But if you basically, I really recommend you read Terry Molesky's book or you watch a documentary. It's just like clear. They all get out on a technicality, and Canadian justice system is a joke. But there is no question that basically Malik financed it. It's in court records that he said, only 300 people were killed. If 500 were killed, then they would have known the glory of Sikhism or Khalistan. He basically, the bomber who is convicted, the bomb who assembled the bomb, the Malik pays his wife through all this decade. So basically that bomber never opens his mouth. Who did it? Now that is part of the court record. The guy who basically assembled the bomb, he was basically a car mechanic. So Malik basically drives an expert to his home, and they stay for a week, and they make a bomb that is powerful and blow an airplane. So, this is all part of court record. And just because he said something, pro-Modi, and yeah. Hello?
Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, I think the screen was frozen again. Puneet, my next question to you is this. Never mind other political parties making mistakes in Punjab. When Modi became PM in 2014, from 2014 till 2017, if I'm not mistaken, there was a BJP government in Punjab, or was Captain Amarinder Singh still the CM of the state in 2014? Because I remember that the BJP was in partnership with the Akalis.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're probably right.
Yes. Yeah. So my question is that they were there for 3 years, and I believe the Khalistan started gaining traction immediately after 2014. Immediately, things started coming from across the border. Uh, Never mind the mistakes of other political parties. We have a lot of expectation with the BJP. Prime Minister Modi, it's a one man show. I'm very sorry, but it's a one man show. But he has some very good people around him. But it's all riding on him basically. Uh, like in the olden days, the king, leading the charge. So what mistakes BJP has made in Punjab when it had some semblance of power in the state, and when, as a center, it failed to dictate policies and a few other, say, national security issues, which it could have been a lot, stricter with, like they sometimes do that in Kashmir. But now I think even in Kashmir they are. It's politically it is slipping. Anyway, never mind Kashmir, but we'll come back to Punjab. Your thoughts?
Yeah, like I have a lot of respect for Modi, and like I actually studied him when he was like the chief minister of Gujarat, and I really believe he's like maybe like not once in a century, at least like once in a generation leader. Like he's a transformative statesman. I have like all the respect. But in Punjab, I don't know. I really think history is very important because it actually tells you like what kinds of actions bring what kinds of outcomes. And I really think like in Punjab, they never have a principle coherent position. That's what I believe, right? They've always been basically lackeys of the Akalis. And what are Akalis? They're basically soft Khalistanis. Akalis have no principled position. When they are in power, they are completely fine. As soon as they're out of power, they're again being, Sikhism is under threat or something. And BJP believes like to have Hindu-Sikh unity, they just have to be lackeys of Akalis. There is no like principled position in that. And and then they do like some opportune things, like maybe they don't think through that really like blow up in their face. So basically when Modi came to power in 2014, 6 months after that, Rajnath Singh basically gave speech. And it's not just a speech, he basically says, ye danga nahi, ye narsanghar tha. And narsanghar can be a pogrom, which you said, which is the right word, or a genocide, which is not right. And it's a very big thing. So, and he has a chance to clarify. The media asked him, he doesn't clarify. And 2 days after, he on Twitter in English, he writes this was a genocide. Now, basically, so this happens in 2014, December, 6 months after Modi comes to power. Now, all these Khalistanis in Canada, it starts from Canada and then, it goes to US and, it's spreading. They use that Rajnath Singh statement and they are passing resolution in their provincial assemblies that India did a genocide. And now, so this happened in Ontario government, it happened in like California State Assembly, a few days back, it happened in New Jersey. And what is very thing, like once you get a genocide, these people at Twitter, Facebook, or anybody, like they don't know, they say, oh, genocide, that this country is evil and you can't criticize. So basically, they use this as a ruse to basically silence out all criticism of this Khalistani atrocities. So, like this has really become like a big problem because like, for example, they basically got deleted my personal account. And how did that happen? Basically, when I give evidence of this Khalistanis did all these atrocities, they have like a very organized system and, they do it through this application called Discord. And like they have thousands of people from all over the world. And they all report at the same time from different parts of the world. And they report like he's targeting a persecuted minority. And they are a persecuted, they don't say like he is criticizing terrorism or an ideology. They say genocide happened, we are a persecuted minority and this is hate speech. Now, nobody like, I think there are few people, there is one Terry Milewski, he has like this verified account, but like it's almost impossible to speak. This is what they were doing by force. Now they are using this Twitter and social media to basically silence out like all of the evidence of the atrocities they did.
Well, actually, this interview is actually comes just a day after the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from the Kashmir Valley 32 years ago. Again, I personally know a lot of Kashmiris in Delhi, and I have seen them go through the pain and the suffering of losing a close family friend, same as many of my Sikh friends had to endure. So the election is going to be in February. But historically, people have not gone and voted for those who are openly against India, Khalistanis. People in Punjab have not done that. They are, I wouldn't even call them a minority. They are just a fraction, but they have somehow have a very big microphone to propagate their ideas. And as they say in English, if you lie hard enough and long enough, it becomes the truth. So this time around, another political party is the Aam Aadmi Party, which basically comes and fills the vacuum as they did in 2014 in Delhi. I was there. I voted for them actually twice. I voted for them, but then I was able to see through the facade. And now they are again there in Punjab. How do you view Aam Aadmi Party, which had some dalliances with Khalistanis? And then we will proceed to the next question.
So Balaji bhai, two things. First thing is like why again, why history is so important. I always saw through Kejriwal, because like what is so fascinating is, like if you see when he came on the
I
stage
did.
in 2000, no, if
I,
you
I,
see
I
like,
was I was a fool.
no, I'm saying if you read 2013 and 2014, what Kejriwal was saying. Now, what is fascinating is they were word to word what Lalu Yadav was saying. Like I will go in a rickshaw. These people have it. The rich people have stolen it. Like I will go in a. He also said I will go in like a Wagoner or something like that. Just like theatrics. If you look, people forgot. But if like it's a very curious bit of research. If you see when Lalu Yadav was coming to stage, he was using the exact same word what Kejriwal was doing. He was saying I would wipe out corruption. The rich people have it, like we will make this, and they have all this money, and I will live like a simple man. Meri kya aukaat hai ji, main to aam aadmi hu ji. Exact, like there is as much similarity between Lalu Yadav and Kejriwal as Akali Dal and Muslim League. So history keeps repeating itself. Now what you say is like, you yourself said Punjabis never voted for them. But the good thing was there was usually like, two broad sides, like Akalis or Khalistanis and, like Congress. And, we criticize Congress mistakes, but Congress, a lot of people, Ben Singh, he's the one who wiped out terrorism and he paid with his life. This Bitta, who was like the bravest man, he also was from Congress, So actually, if you look, they had a more principled position at that time, not now. I'm talking in the past, they lost so many people. Like who stood for Indian nationhood and against terrorism, BJP had a very pussyvinous position. They were just like, okay, whatever Akalis are saying, we are going to do the same. And Akalis are duffers, right? So Congress also has a contribution. But anyways, now when you have this 3-4 group, it's very dangerous. Because people don't want Khalistanis. But if you get 15 or 20% vote in like a very divided assembly, then you can make the power. And if, Aam Aadmi Party, with its like theatrics and opportunism that comes to Punjab, then it would be very, very, very tragic. And actually, that has got me very worried.
What are the chances of the captain, who, by the way, just few months back was standing to Modi? Now he's standing with Modi. Everyone sort of always had respect because he will go to a certain distance for his party, but then he will put himself back. He did that with Navjot Singh Sidhu when he said, "No, I will not be, I will not allow this kind of behavior of one of my ministers." Or I don't know, maybe he had removed Sidhu as one of his ministers. So where do you see the captain? He has a new party. He has, I suppose, he has some money. I suppose because it's politics. I'm sure he does. So where do you
No, you
see
see, like
the
captain, for
captain?
example,
And
yeah. If you see captain, you have to judge by the
where do you
constraints he
see?
had. So he also had to protect all these criminals like Mukhtar Ansari and all these people. Because like the Congress government, like this from Delhi, they won't let him do it. But the right way to look at it, despite all this pressure from this opportunistic and this idiot Rahul Gandhi, still he took like strong position on national security. whether it was 370 or like this Balakot and all these things. So we have to judge a person in the constraint he works. He didn't really have a free hand to say whatever or do whatever. But still on national security, he was this. And, it's a bit tricky, because I don't really have like data. I'm not on the ground. And the third thing is like, whatever you hope, you become biased toward it. So my certainly is like the best for Punjab would be like this Amrinder-led BJP government. There's a leader who is a patriot, who understands national security, who has administrative experience, and like BJP. But I want this, right? So, but what we want, we offer conflate with our analysis. So I would rather skip it because like unless I have like the data or like ground survey or something, I can't say. But I can just like, if anybody like cares about what I think or my analysis, I think that is the only option. Otherwise, Punjab has very dark days ahead.
Actually, no one has the data as far as I know of Punjab, because the party was just formed a few weeks back, and to hit the ground running, I mean, it would be a straw poll to get an actual feel of things. A lot of people are going to get a lot of things wrong. But yeah, if we go back to the historicity of the way people in Punjab have voted, it's quite possible that what you said, there's a likelihood that that might happen. But now let's come back to the. Okay, before I come back to that question, do you think the Akalis might again come back into the bandwagon of the BJP in Punjab and in the center?
I don't know. Like, Akalis basically are unprincipled, uneducated, and unintelligent people. Like, all they care about is basically power. So why not? Like, these people can't survive out of power. Like, they don't have any principled position. They just like, brother, you were telling me like about 84. Even like this, what's fascinating is like, not fascinating, where it's kind of tragic. So when Indira Gandhi was basically assassinated by her bodyguards, now if you see, like there is a gap of a few hours. Now if you see, like the first thing he says, the Jathedar of Akal Takht says like, this is very sad news. But then he gets like pressure, we have like some Panthik vote, and they're like, no, we don't criticize these people who have basically murdered her. And then they just flip-flop. They have like no principled position on anything. And they've never had it. They just like, they want power, and power comes from basically communal politics and fanning insecurity or something like that. They have never produced like I don't know, like a sensible. They have produced like very like there was like this guy Jeevan Singh Umranagal. It's a tragic. This should be like one of our biggest national heroes, who was Akali. Who at his personal cost and cost of his family, he was going like when this Punjab was under like under like cloud of death. He was doing Hindu-Sikh unity at his own cost and going to Haryana. Like,
yes,
there was actually an exodus also of Hindus from Punjab. Most people don't know this. So anyways, they're very good-hearted people and brave people. But to expect anything of intelligence from Akalis is I think it's foolish in itself.
Well, if the Akalis are not principled lot, I think they are still. Would you say if we have to choose between Akalis and the AAP, let's just say that is the only option, and say for the government to be formed, the Akalis have to be taken into the captain and the BJP government. Would you like to see the Akalis there or the Aam Aadmi Party? I mean, this is a very
no, like there is no comparison. Like, Akalis are much better. Akalis are like like much better than this Aam Aadmi Party.
Much better. Now we're going to come to the last party, Congress.
I will tell you like one thing. Like when you talk about Akali, so Akalis have played opportune politics, and they have said some stupid things, and what like that. But to give Badal his credit, actually, if you look at 80s politics, there are a lot of people. There is Talwandi, and there is Toda, and there is Bhindranwale. Like they are basically these three radicals who are bent on creating havoc. And they are basically like evil with putrid hatred in their heart. So, like Badalji like gives like some statement or something. He's also not this principled or a brave man like KPS Gill. But in all this like radical Akalis who basically, sowed poison, he was always the voice of moderation. So, for example, in 1984, I think 26 January, he is one of the person who also burns the Indian constitution or something like that. That's a different thing. But if you look at all this like motley group, Badals have always been one of moderation, not of radicalization compared to like, so, like Bhindranwala, of course, they have to say a bit radical to maintain their position. So they're not discredited from this like religious people, but they have always been a voice of moderation.
Okay, now we come to the last party, the Congress. It has lost its tallest leader in the state, Captain Singh, because of I don't I can't even imagine what was the thinking. He was not a threat to Rahul Gandhi. He's 80 years old. Congress has a, as they say in Hindi, एक मैदान में दो तलवार नहीं हो सकती. Congress has Channi and Sidhu. Channi somehow, it seems to me, is a bit smarter than Sidhu. He at least measures his words some to a certain extent before he speaks. Sidhu, uh, you don't know which side of the bed he wakes up from, if I may put it that way. Uh, where do you see the Congress in Punjab, and is there going to be a massive division in Punjab?
So there are two things. Like, first of all, you say you can't understand the logic. I think logic is very clear. Like you can actually see in sports team or like in a business team or something. Like if you are the leader, like you are the CEO, and you are competent and you are smart, then you don't feel shy. You will encourage other people also into position of leadership. You do this. But if you are basically a duffer and a mediocre or an incompetent, any talented person would always be a threat to you. So if you read like great novels, this has always been the case. They can't accept that. This is what they did with Himanta Biswa Sarma. Like, what was his problem? They just humiliate anybody who is talent, like who says, oh, like this. So insecure people always do this. So Rahul Gandhi has this genetic defect, and it will always be the case. He will, as long as Congress exists, and he will do this because Jyotiraditya is a threat. The Sachin Pilot is a threat because he's just incompetent. Now, when you talked about this, again, like Channi, I also thought he was a lead, but I have listened to him 2-3 times, and he actually gives. I'm not even a vote, like I'm not even a voter in Punjab, but anyways, but he actually, like, I think people are underestimating him. He's actually like a smart, shrewd head, and like, of course, what happened this with Prime Minister Securities is despicable, but he actually seems like somebody with like not like an empty shell. And like Sidhu has nothing, he's just like, he's like a loudmouth. He used like Asman ka kuch ye nahi, phana kuch ye nahi, like there's nothing like the sky, nothing like this earth, and and then he would just fit the name of like Keshubhai Patel or Narendra Modi or Sonia Gandhi. He would just say this, even this Majithia that he has the fight with, and that's the BJP. When he came, you hear the speeches and you would not believe what he was saying for Majithia. He was saying, I would like to be skinned, and my skin should be made into the shoes of Majithia. Like he was that, like Majithia is such a great person, and now he's abusing him. So he just like is one day, and the next day he would abuse it. Even if there's this, when KPS Gill died, that I agree with him. If you take out the statement, Sidhu also said, he said KPS Gill is a great saint of Punjab. Like when Punjab was under death, KPS Gill brought peace in Punjab, which is right. But when he was in Congress, he thought, that will get me brownie points because Congress has lost leaders and this. But so then he would say that. And today he thinks, I can get a better deal with this, like fanning Khalistanis and radicals. He's doing that. So he's basically a person with like no sense of embarrassment. And I don't think he has any principle either. So he will just like, venerate you in the most flowery language and then turn and abuse you in the like most crude words, and he has a history of doing that.
Uh, Again, as I said earlier, Akalis or Aap, uh, Channi or Sidhu, let's just say that between the two, uh, who has more sense?
Sorry?
If at all say that Congress somehow forms the government with Aam Aadmi Party, and uh, who do you think would be the choice Will it be Chennai or would it be Sidhu?
So if you look at this
Hypothetical
politics,
question.
it's like bad both ways, because like whenever you have like a coalition government, it's basically the minority party that is basically gets in the government. It like gets disproportionate influence. So either AAP gets its own chief minister, or it gets a disproportionate influence in the government, which is a lose-lose situation. So Chennai has like hard time dealing with Sidhu, and imagine all this like crazies of AAP. So we are like, even if like Congress is the bigger partner, we are in for like some very tragic times.
Uh, Actually, Puneet, I wanted to discuss something else also, but I don't think it is the right time. I wanted to talk about the farm laws and all that, but it does not go sit well with what we discussed today, and the future of the farming industry in Punjab and the lack of industrial development in Punjab in the last 25 years. 1995 onwards, there was peace. Yes, there was some sporadic violence, but things were back to normal. And Punjab missed out the period of development. And basically, like Kerala, it became a remittance kind of economy. I mean,
Right.
so many Punjabis living abroad, they came back, they built houses there, and they pay house tax, and so much of investment, but not the kind of investment in the industrial scale that you would expect in Punjab. So perhaps maybe next time, if you have the time, we can discuss that. But I do believe that this election, uh, this UP election and the Punjab election, are very, very crucial. Punjab, basically because it is a border state, and if say an Aam Aadmi party comes there, our national security will be at threat, because see, basically, I'm sure you also know that, and a lot of people who might be watching this would also know that Aam Aadmi Party wants the police and the finance department and all the bureaucratic machinery under its control, so that it can start dictating terms. In Delhi, Kejriwal is sort of toothless CM in a sense, but he has managed to cause a lot of damage. But in Punjab, there would be real damage, a damage that may take again 20 years to repair, because all you need is just a grain of salt to destroy tons of liters of milk, if you want, hundreds of liters of milk if you want. So that is the case, I feel. And it I feel very sad because I am from Delhi. I grew up with Punjabis, basically, and I feel very, very sad the way things are turning out in Punjab. So much of drug addiction, so much of consumption of alcohol during the protest. They were eating biryani. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but halal meat is not permitted in Sikhism, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, vegetarianism is in fact promoted. So I would like to, maybe some other time, would like to ask you how and when this culture of consuming meat and so much of alcohol started seeping into the Punjabi culture. I mean, it's not that other communities don't drink. In Tamil Nadu, so many people die each year because of alcoholism. But this problem, I would like to certainly discuss with you. So, Puneet, your closing comments on how you see Punjab in the coming days.
No, thank you. And like I agree with a lot of what you say, and we should certainly do another episode. So but Punjab is not just a border state. Even Gujarat is a border state, then Rajasthan is a border state. But we have the problem of Akalis and SGPC here, which are always, ready to play Muslim League type politics. And then you have like we are both from Delhi. We never happened. Could we imagine that there will be like riots in Delhi? And this is all Kejriwal's doing. They fanned the CAA protest, and like this happened. And and after this farmer protests were they were inspired from CAA protest. And these were all Kejriwal's doing. He was not stopping them. They are blocking public spaces of your state, and he's feeding them water and food. So like this, I really think like up like politics. They are basically, I don't know, they are kind of like this woke, idiotic people that are in America. And, it's like, Thomas Jefferson said is like freedom is not for like once achieved and it's always there. Like every generation has to struggle to preserve it and learn the message again. And I think that's what we have to do. Like they're really like, they can destroy the entire
Your
country.
voice is breaking, Puneet.
Yeah. Okay. I think we conclude here, and I would just say, vote is very important and use it judiciously. And, like a lot of India, like depends on how Punjab votes, in our near future. It depends. So please vote wisely.
With that, Puneet, thank you very much for joining Bharat Vichar from New York. And for the first time on the show, I'm going to ask people to like and subscribe this channel. I have never said this. I've done quite a few podcasts, but I have never said this. So I decided that today I'll ask people to please like and subscribe this channel. We are a South Indian based podcast. I'm based out of Bangalore, and a lot of my friends here, South Indian friends, who have no idea whatsoever about the militancy in Punjab or Kashmir or the things that we saw that we have experienced in Delhi. They have no idea. But sooner or later, these things they might come there. So thank you very much for coming on Bharat Vichar, Puneet, and I hope I'll get to see you again, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you.
But Balaji bhai, I would do one thing. I would send a link to KPS Gill's book.
Yeah, please.
And please put it in the description. So people who don't know Punjab, they read so they understand what was happened. So in the description, I'll send you a link and, we do this. Okay. Thank you, Jai Ma Bharati. Pleasure talking
to you. I'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.